Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. First up today, news. We've got the D&D class survey that is still live. Other than that, no new news. So if you have run, played, anything like that, any of the subclasses presented in the original Player's Handbook, please go and fill out at least that section of the survey so that wizards can do with that information what they will. Again, I think that we are probably looking at getting a revised Player's Handbook coming out sometime in 2022. Based on this, I don't necessarily think it's going to be a new edition because of how well 5e is doing. They have an insane amount of fans worldwide, so I don't think that they're going to move on just yet, but I do think that they're going to be revising some of the subclasses that seem to have fallen behind a little bit in power scaling since the addition of things like Xanathars and Tashas. Also, they'll probably reprint the original races to line up with the new direction they've gone since Tashas has been released. Other than that, no new D&D news. Well, that's not really new. No D&D news that I've had come my way. Other than that, in addition, streams that are happening today. Less of a stream, but still kind of a big name. Dimension 20's The Seven. The 4th episode comes out tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Dropout. If you are not subscribed to Dropout, it's $5 a month. If that is something that interests you, it is hysterical so far. The cast of The Seven is phenomenal, and I've loved it thus far. And I'm sure it won't get any worse than this because Dimension 20 is very well done. But that is it for news and streams that I know of for today. So we're going to move on to what we are talking about today, which, as I mentioned yesterday, is the other half of the name of the game, quite literally. Yesterday we talked about dungeons. Today I want to talk about some dragons, because that feels appropriate. So to preface, I'm going to be talking about sort of the lore that has been built in around these dragons. It helps with characterization and personification of these dragons. So it's more for GMs than anything else, but it can be useful for hyper-intelligent characters that players are playing to be able to know these sort of things and be able to approach them in that particular way. So we're just going to dive right in, and kicking off from the top, we are going to start with the chromatic section. Now, the chromatics are the traditionally evil dragons. They're the ones that follow Tiamat, the evil dragon goddess who lives down in the Nine Hells. Again, they can be whatever you want. You can have yourself a friendly chromatic dragon if you so choose. This is just what has been presented to us thus far. Starting right at the top with the big one, the red dragon. It's the one that's on the back of, like the DM screen. It's the one that's on all the pictures and everything like that. It's the one everybody thinks of when they think of dragon from Dungeons and Dragons, because it's effectively the king chromatic, like the king of the chromatic races, more or less. They're generally covetous, vain, arrogant, and vengeful. So they like to amass their wealth. They like to have things that sort of propagate their vision of themselves as these almost divine beings. And they do not take kindly to anybody that chooses to stand against them. Their preferred servants are humanoids of really any kind, willing or not. If they are not willing, they will bend and break them to their will. And yeah, I think that's the end of that sentence. They choose to collect anything of value, so they will. They are not particularly discerning about the things that they put into their hoard, but so long as it has a value and they can recognize that it has value, which they are incredibly good at, they will put it into their hoard. The environment around them, obviously they have a specific layer with layer effects that are concentrated in that area, but the environment around them, for something like 6 miles around them, there are often earthquakes, the water gets warm and sulfurous, and on occasion, portals to the fire plane start to open, just sort of in the area around them, bringing in things like fire elementals, potentially Djinni, which can wreak havoc on any sort of civilizations that are just around. And they will set up near civilizations because that is where they will have the easiest access to wealth and potential servants. Moving right along to the green dragons. These are cunning, treacherous, wily, and manipulative dragons. These are the ones that think a little bit more than the rest of the chromatics, potentially. They prefer scheming and they prefer to outwit their enemies. They will particularly pick up goblinoids, orcs, kobolds, yuan-ti, and ettins as servants. These tend to be the less intelligent races, so they can lord their intelligence over them, and they can appear as that sort of demigod to them. They actually, instead of collecting things of value, prefer to collect sentient creatures. Often they will expand their collection to be those that actually want to follow them, but sometimes they will effectively build themselves a zoo within their layers where they keep all of their sentient creatures that they pride themselves on having gotten because they are smarter than them, they have outwitted them in some way, something to sort of bolster that ego and perpetuate the idea to them that they are the smartest of dragons. The area around their lair becomes a labyrinth of thickets and bushes and greenery that has that will trap creatures that decide to move through them, as the bushes will start to move and shift a little bit to block off passages that these creatures have gone down. In addition, there is effectively no large game there, no large game being your deer, your moose, your that sort of thing, but there is plenty of small game which serve as spies for the green dragon. Moving forward, we have the blue dragon. They are vain, territorial, patient, and methodical. So while the green dragon prefers to outwit its enemies in such a way that allows it to feel more intelligent than them, the blue dragons are the ones that will sit and wait, and they will slowly but surely chip away at whatever its enemies are. They actually prefer to bring on bards, sages, assassins, wizards, and artists, anything that will help sort of bolster their picture of self and help perpetuate anything that will sort of bolster their image of self and help perpetuate this vanity that they hold, because they sort of toe the line between the green and the red in that they are arrogant and vain, but they are also intelligent and not quite super animalistic. They think that blue is, of course, the most beautiful color in the world, so they prefer to collect treasures that is blue. In particular, they prefer to collect sapphires, so that is their preferred treasure of choice. In the area surrounding their lair, oftentimes thunderstorms and dust devils kick up, in addition to sinkholes just sort of opening within 6 miles of wherever this blue dragon has set up. So it becomes a very dangerous place for civilization to just exist, which is unfortunate for the civilization because dragons tend to go find the civilization and set up camp near it. Moving along from blue onto black. These are brutal, vile, and temperamental dragons. They are cruel to an extent where they will very slowly kill the things that they are fighting, attacking, hunting. They like to draw out the hunt and they like to make their prey suffer as much as possible. They prefer to have lizard folk and kobolds be their servants. These two in particular, particularly evil lizard folk and kobolds, the ones that will support and bring them things for them to torture and draw out the killing of. They will collect the wealth of civilizations, particularly the wealth of civilizations past. They like to find and collect the goods, the wealth, the the things of monetary value from fallen civilizations, because they believe that those civilizations that they have outlasted prove that they are more powerful, and they will actually become more and more aggressive in their collection of that, to the point where they will start to collect things from civilizations that have not necessarily fallen yet, and they are actively working to outpace and outlive. The land around them becomes overgrown, and the water becomes poison, with this like light mist of fog that covers the entire area for no discernible reason. Black dragons are the poison type dragon, effectively, so it makes sense that they would be poisoning the water, poisoning the land, and with the fog kind of poisoning the air. That is a fun sort of DM flavor tool you can use if you so choose. You can reflavor the fog to be aggressive or poisonous or something like that. Finally, in the chromatic sphere, we have our white dragons. These are the most animalistic of any of the chromatic dragons. They are vicious and they are primal. They are not the smartest. In fact, they are statistically, technically, and lore-wise the dumbest of the chromatic dragons. That said, they are still dragons. Dragons are hyper-intelligent creatures to begin with, so saying that they are particularly unintelligent comparatively is not to say they're unintelligent entirely. They just tend to bend to that inner desire, that animalistic desire, more than the other ones do. They prefer to have their servants be super intelligent humanoids as well as kobolds. The intelligent humanoids will help advise them on the things that they need to do in order to gain wealth, gain power, gain land, that sort of thing, whereas the kobolds are more grunts in their army, effectively. They, similar to blue dragons, think that white is the most beautiful color in the world, and so they will actively seek to collect things like diamonds, ivory, and ship heads, ironically, because so many ships go down in the Arctic areas that they will actively go look for the mastheads at the front of ships that have gone down, or they will go and steal them off of floating ships because they find them beautiful. They case all of their treasure in deep layers of ice so that normal individuals cannot get to it, but they can with their just brute raw strength. The area surrounding a white dragon's lair is covered in cold fog. There are oftentimes blizzards, freezing rain, and cold precipitation of that sort, and random ice walls will crop up as you get closer to the actual layer, making it more and more difficult to make it into the actual center layer part of a dragon's lair. And that wraps up the chromatic dragons. Which means that we move along to the metallic dragons. These are your traditionally good dragons. These are the ones that would form the Justice League as opposed to the Legion of Doom. They actively follow Bahamut, the Platinum Dragon, the lawful good dragon deity, and they are obviously all based on precious metals. That is why they are called metallic dragons. We're going to go kicking off from the gold, similar to last time. This is the most powerful, the king dragon, if you will, of the metallic dragons. Gold dragons absolutely staunchly oppose and despise evil, which feels very like Boy Wonder to me, but that's quite literally what they wrote in the book. They wrote that gold dragons are foes of evil. So that's what I got for you. Gold dragons are actually also, depending on how you want to play it, potentially the most private of the metallic dragons, with a lot of the other ones being more active and friendly around humanoid creatures. But gold dragons tend to keep themselves distant from particularly humanoids. They do interact with others of their same species, particularly their same color, but they like to keep themselves separate from the day-to-day mortal life. They collect and eat pearls and gems. They collect wealth as a whole, but they like to actively eat pearls and gems. They don't necessarily need that to be the singular diet that they sustain, but for some reason they like to eat them because they give them some kind of bolstering of health or something like that. In an area surrounding a gold dragon's lair, there are banks of mist that sort of roll through with fair regularity. Gems and pearls sort of glow at random within about 6 miles of this dragon. And they actually, intentionally or not, they can intentionally do it, connect via dream to any sentient dreaming creature in the area. They can sort of send out a ping and hook up with that creature's mind and have a conversation while that creature is asleep. Next up on the Metallic Dragon scale are the Silver Dragons. These are friendly, they are social, they are virtuous sort of dragons. They actively collect historical humanoid objects, similar to the Black Dragon, but they are more interested in the history behind it than in outlasting these different humanoid civilizations. They, in being friendly with humanoids, they interact with them in such a way that allows them to appreciate their culture and the culture's past, and they will actively look for these objects in order to deepen their understanding, bolster their own intelligence, because at the end of the day, all of these dragons are vain creatures. That is just sort of their thing. These just happen to be the friendly, nice ones. The Silver Dragon can control the weather, similar to the Control Weather spell in the area surrounding its lair. They oftentimes give helpful winds if they're near a coastline or near somewhere that will need some kind of wind to come through for whatever reason. And they can actually construct cloud structures. So structures up within the clouds, they have the ability to manipulate and create. Then following the Silver Dragon, we have the Bronze Dragon. These are, again, friendly and curious dragons. They like to spend a lot of time out near coastlines, and actually these seem to be the friendliest and most almost innocently curious dragons of all of the metallic dragons. They will oftentimes take on different forms in order to get closer looks at humanoids and animal life. They will take on animal forms and that sort of thing in order to get a closer view up. They really, really like ships, like a lot for some reason. And so they actually collect predominantly coral, pearls, and ships. Particularly the ships that have sunken, they don't like go steal a boat and fly away with it. The ships that have sunken, they will dive down and they will take pieces and parts of it back to their lair, because they adore boats and seafaring for some reason. The area around a bronze dragon's lair is filled with illusory sounds. They can also control weather, and there is a more robust sea life in the area whenever they have moved into the area. So the sea life will become the sea life will boom and blossom as they have moved into the area. Next up are brass dragons. They are the most gregarious of the metallic dragons. They value intelligent conversation over almost anything else, which makes them also incredibly social, similar to the bronze and silver dragons. They're curious and social, and they will oftentimes spend a lot of time walking in a humanoid's shoes. They specifically want to collect magic items that give it the opportunity to converse with intelligent beings. because they value conversation over everything else, they would prefer to have something connected to, we'll say, a genie that holds less actual monetary value than a mountain of gemstones in that place, because they would likely use those gemstones as their humanoid self to go figure out and be able to buy whatever that is. The brass dragon, the area around the brass dragon's lair, because they like dry desert sort of climates, they will actually leave tracks in the sand. Sorry, not they will leave tracks in the sand. There will be tracks in the sand, like just random humanoid creature, potentially dragon as well, tracks in the sand surrounding them for like 6 miles around. They also will have random illusions of different creatures crop up out of nowhere because of... Actually, I guess I don't know why. I don't know why I started that with because. I have no idea why that is, but it is written in the book. So, that's what I got for you. Finally, our last metallic dragon, the Copper Dragon. The Copper Dragons are, I'm going to say, the most juvenile of them. Not because they don't live as long, but because they are the pranksters, the jokesters, the ones that like to mess around with the other dragons and other individuals. They're also relatively even-tempered, but they do get angry seemingly more often than the other dragons, or the other metallic dragons, when they have one pulled over on them and they're made to feel stupid. So while they enjoy their good jokes and everything like that, they do not like being the heavy butt of a joke in that way. They value precious metals and gemstones, anything that comes from the earth, so they like to get anything that will be excavated, so they will obviously oftentimes set up shop near mines or mining towns. And the area around them, in sort of a deviation of fashion almost from the other ones, there is giggling that permeates the air every once in a while, just sort of like faint giggles that echo around for no real reason. The rodents and birds speak Draconic. So if you speak Draconic, you can start speaking to the small creatures of the area. And at random, there are carved portraits of the dragon in trees, in rock, in any sort of surface around there. Which is, again, a weird sort of deviation from the effects that the rest of the metallics have in their sphere. But Copper is our last metallic dragon, and you might be saying, well, that's probably it, right? Other than those like dragon turtles and wyverns and that sort of thing. And those guys are a topic for a different day, because they are dragons, but they're not true dragons. They're dragonoid kind of things, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point here. There's actually one more dragon that I want to talk about before we get going, and that is the gem dragons. And currently, we only have sapphire dragons, so that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm sure that I will come back to gem dragons when Fizban's comes out. I'm so excited for that book. I love dragons, and I'm so excited we're getting a full slew of gem dragons. But sapphire dragons. Sapphire dragons of the gem dragons apparently are the most territorial, militaristic, and reclusive. They do not necessarily always get along with the smaller races that live in the areas that they do, which is predominantly mountain ranges. So they end up in fights with them a lot over resources and treasure, but they will also make alliances with them if they think that it will help their cause overall. The servants, they don't really, forcibly take servants so much, are, like I said, those smaller races that live in the mountains, if it behooves them to have that alliance set up and working. So usually Deep in Rock gnomes, occasionally Duergar or Drow in addition to those. They, being the most militaristic of the gem dragons, covet magic, weapons, and armor over most anything else. Uh, they will have obviously a hoard of gold and stuff like that, but their prized possessions come in the form of magic weapons, magic armor, and they keep a very organized sort of display of all of their things within their lair. The area surrounding a gem, or specifically a sapphire gem dragon's lair, consists of lots of giant spiders, huge new sapphire deposits, and these crazy crystal formations that just sort of crop up out of nowhere. They influence the land in such a weird way because they are technically psionic based dragons, which is part of the reason that I'm really excited to get a full book sort of helping explain what the deal is with all that. Again, I'm sure I'll cover that more when Fizban's actually comes out, but until then, this is what we've got to go on, and everything else is just sort of speculation at this point. But that is everything I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for waking up, making me part of your morning routine. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe and follow along so that I can continue to do this, because the more people that enjoy it and stick around, the more likely it is that I will be able to just continue to do it. Come back tomorrow morning. I am going to be doing something called Third Party Thursdays, I think, where I'm going to be taking a third-party supplement, looking at it, talking about it, and running through what's in it. Tomorrow, I believe I'm going to be doing the Griffin Saddlebag, which is a lovely resource that I have used for a long time and I absolutely adore. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys about that. But until next time, keep on rolling.